Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and we start Monday morning on the 17th of October, coming to you from London. And we look, as always, we start with Forex. A very busy week in Forex last week. We see here the weekly candle, just a very strong week for the dollar, and that shows up in the 5 days here, and in the 60-minute chart, of course, that is across the week. So that one candle there equals that chart there. So this is long-term, medium-term, and short-term, and the same here on my point and figure charts. 1% log scale, 0.5%, and 0.1% on the 60-minute chart. So we can see we've got some medium-term targets. Nothing really to call for on the short term, although this target of 103, which would take us to a new high on the 60-minute, is showing through. So the dollar really showing some strength at the moment. Did just pull back a bit at the end of last week, but the reality is that the dollar is looking strong. Looking at the euro, weekly is bearish, daily is now clearly bearish, and the 60-minute is bearish. No real clear downside targets. There is one to $1, €1, 1 cent. So we are seeing that sort of 101 target. That's about 8% downside. That was given back in June, and we're now just starting to see this play out, and quite a lot of medium-term targets to the low 100 area. So we can see that euro weakness is coming back in as well. Looking at Japanese yen, we can see here that we've got again downside targets. We are, remember, this chart is inverted, so it's dollar strength. If this chart is getting more yen to the dollar, and it just has started to poke through on the daily here, and we broke this September high as well. So quite key there, but that we're seeing that in the yen. We look at sterling. Of course, two very bad weeks in sterling. We see here the price action over the last few weeks just falling away again, and still bearish on the 60-minute chart. Sterling this morning is at 128, 121.85. Not really much to see there on the downside targets. If you really want to see sterling in the short term, go to the 1-minute chart. This data all coming from Bloomberg. Press the T key on your chart, and it will just basically take all that data, and 117.50 is the target to watch out for here. A few mini targets here. Adjust the box size down in this bottom left-hand corner. We can see the downside targets still just slightly outweighing the upside, but waiting really for the next big move. So keep an eye on that chart. We look at the euro sterling rate, 111 at the moment, and that also is. We are seeing this just deteriorating here slightly as well. So, and then the Australian dollar, just another look here into into the 150s area at about 160 at the moment, but bearish on all charts here too. Quick look at stock markets. We look at the S&P 500 index. We see here that we did have this sell-off towards the end of last week. We do have some downside targets, so really struggling. This 2130 level at the moment. 2120 is the support level, and we did just nudge that on Thursday last week. So we just need to be aware that market is just topping a little bit here. We do have good upside target potential, but in the short term, looking quite bearish. Same is true on the Nasdaq. We've got one downside target, bearish on the 60-minute chart. So US stocks just looking like they're struggling a little bit at the moment. And of course, there's a volatility around the October factor, the election coming. A little bit of uncertainty is unsettling markets, but the long-term chart's still looking pretty good. If we look at the FTSE, the UK index, just turning bearish here in the short term as well. This was holding out a little bit longer than the US markets, and we got good upside targets here. We did break that 7,000 level last week. We haven't managed to stay above it. We're back below it this morning, and we do have targets of around 4% downside. So we are seeing markets just producing some downside potential targets. The 250 FTSE 250 index also just looking a little bit bearish there as well. We take a quick look at the DAX. The DAX is actually much the same, just holding on to a little bit of bullishness here. Still, the weekly chart not great on the DAX. And if we take a look at the Nikkei, Nikkei did have a little bit of a rise overnight in Asia, but we are seeing that this market strangely is bullish in the short term, bullish in the medium term, but still bearish in the long term with some significant downside targets. We're seeing much the same on most other Asian markets. In fact, Shanghai is above at the moment on the cloud, but this weekly situation is hanging over us. And we take a look at the Hang Seng again, much the same picture, bearish long term, but and bearish short term, and we've got some quite key targets. The Sensex market, India, just having had a good run in the last few months, is starting to just come back a bit. Bearish now on the daily, on the 60-minute chart, short term, with some downside potential of about 2%. So not massive downside potential. And the Australian market also having just turned a bit bearish here now on the 60-minute chart. Bullish, just turning bullish on the weekly, bullish on the daily. And we do have uptrends and targets to the upside, but again, just a small amount of downside potential here. Taking a look at crude oil, crude is just struggling around this 52.50 level for Brent. This was the same level in June last year. We did nudge just above it last week, but really struggling to hold any strength. We know crude is weak at this time of year, so we should be surprised to see it going up strongly. And we are bearish again in the short term. Downside potential of about 3% if we make new lows below 51.50 on that short term chart. WTI, much the same picture, bearish here as well, about 3% downside, which would just look like we're about to activate. US nat gas has been strong, just coming through on the weekly, so we're just seeing a long-term trend change here to bullish, bullish on the daily, and just holding still the 60-minute. We do have a little bit of downside potential, but this $3 level has been clearly broken, and we've got upside targets now to the 350s and even greater still. Softs look a little bit better today. We're seeing most softs are up. We see here that we're bearish corn on the long term and medium term, but bullish on the short term, and quite good upside potential. If we look at wheat, much the same thing here. And then if we just take a look at coffee, uh, just coming through on the weekly and bullish on these other charts. So coffee looking quite good there. Gold has had a bit of a sell-off in the last couple of weeks. Sort of the week, 2 or 3 weeks ago, a really big sell-off there, back to the 1250s level. That put us into a bearish mode on the daily chart, and the 60-minute chart has been oscillating bullish to bearish. We do have these long-term upside targets, but gold is just a little bit in the doldrums at the moment, hard to call. And we see the same for silver and some downside targets. Again, similar picture. Silver just tends to lead gold a little bit, so it's quite nice to keep an eye on that chart. Here we see copper, bearish, bearish, bearish. So we're seeing quite a lot of downside potential here for copper, not looking great. Taking a look at just the US 5-year bond. This is the yield chart. Just turning bullish here in the daily, and the 60-minute chart went bearish again at the end of last week, and the long-term rates are still down, but we are seeing some new targets emerging to the upside. So interest rates in the US still having an impact there. Last of all, look at some bellwethers. Apple through on the weekly, on the daily, and the 60-minute chart. Apple looking bullish again. That's going to be good for the Nasdaq. Google just holding this bullishness on the short term, looking pretty bullish. Amazon really has been storming of late, and we just see on the 60-minute chart has pulled back through. Of course, you can do this on any chart. You can create your own list and update it, and you can do this on any stock. So we've got long term, medium term, and short term. This is Facebook, just on a little bit bearish here in the short term, but great upside targets here in the medium and long term. That's it for this today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.